And so one of the main events where they showed that was through what were called festivals of praise, or it's called FOPs for short, with FOP, FOP. And so they would have these FOPs once a month in the field house at the school. So it's pretty similar to what we have here when we do praise and worship. But maybe something that was different about it, well, a couple of things. One is that they would sometimes bring the Eucharist around and process around during the praise and worship. And also that people would often show, they would receive the gifts of the Holy Spirit, charismatic gifts of the Holy Spirit. So you could actually hear people speaking in tongues, and they would fall over because they were slain in the Spirit. Some people laughing uncontrollably. And so at the first FOP I ever went to, the Holy Spirit also acted in a really clear way. Now that wasn't clear, but even clearer way than that. We were singing a song called "Let It Rain," and the words were really simple to that song. I think it's just "Let it rain, open the floodgates of heaven, let it rain." They just keep singing that over and over again. And so as they were singing that, all of a sudden you could hear it start like pouring. You could hear it pouring on the metal roof of the field house. And so everyone in the field house started to smile. They're like, okay, God is listening to our prayers. He's that literally pouring His graces upon us. But even after that, it just kept on raining. So people were sliding down the muddy hills, and they were swimming in the kind of muddy pools that formed. It was just really full of joy. The campus was flooded with the literal rain. So people talked about that for years afterwards. And so that was a really clear indication of the Holy Spirit working during praise and worship. But to be honest, for me, I still didn't really feel comfortable at those FOPs and with that kind of worship. And so I didn't want to close the door on the Holy Spirit, so I would go to the FOPs. But a lot of times, everyone else would be up standing with their hands open, and I'd be kind of sitting there. And I went there with another friend who wasn't really, a couple friends who weren't really into it either, and they were like, hey, you don't have to be here if you don't want to participate. And so I thought maybe there's something wrong with me, because everyone else was so into it. Then I realized that the Holy Spirit was working in my life, and I had a relationship with Him. But for me, He worked in a much quieter way. And one of the ways that I saw Him working, even after I was ordained, was through the sacrament of baptism. And so, if you're like me, you were maybe baptized as a baby or at a much younger age. And so, for me, I have no memory of my baptism. I always heard it was important, but I never didn't really seem like it had a bearing on my life because it was so long ago. But I began to realize how important it was. And it was really when I was ordained a deacon that I realized how important it was, because I was actually able to baptize babies. And that was the only sacrament I could really do as a deacon. And I was even able to baptize a baby on the day of my ordination. So that was really cool. One of the most impactful baptisms I had was actually here at Our Lady of Mercy. And one of the most important masses of the year is the Easter Vigil. And it's also a really long Mass, but it's cool because it's the night before Easter. We are able to read all the stories of how God's been working through salvation history, but also then we receive adults into the Catholic Church. And so many of them are baptized, and others who are already baptized are also confirmed and receive their first communion. But this past year, we had one of the young adults who was being baptized. She had two younger siblings, two younger brothers. And so one, I think he was 6, and one was 2 years old. And so I was already really nervous because this is a big Mass. But I was nervous because as the Mass was going on, you could hear the little 2-year-old crying. And I was like, he's not going to make it through the Mass. And I have to pour water on this and that. It's just not going to be good. And he was the last one to be baptized too. I don't know why we did it that way. So as we were going through, I was like, okay, stop crying. And then when he finally went to the font, he seemed to be content. So okay, this is good. So after I baptized him, I poured the water on his head. He was quiet. But instead of, he's supposed to go into the font on one side and then go out the other side. Instead of moving across, he kind of just froze. And then he started playing in the water. And so everyone was quiet at first, and they all started laughing. And I think we all felt something happening in that moment. I mean, it was really cute, but also we felt God's presence there. I think we realized that that's how we're all called to be with God the Father, that we should be comfortable just being with Him, even playing with Him. And we shouldn't be looking at Him to waiting for Him to ask us to do something. What should I be doing? Should I be doing this or that or that? But that He just wants to be with us, that He just wants to be in our presence. And so that all, even though I'm talking about God the Father, that's all through the Holy Spirit, because the Holy Spirit is the one who makes us God's sons and daughters. So you can see We're trying to get him out of the thought there. He's just playing. And you got to look back and kind of laugh at them too, because they're all this a joyful moment. But I'm just trying to post them out. There's another picture. Right, I just kind of just gave up with that. That was funny. But yeah, so as we continue our journey today with the Holy Spirit, we're going to hear lots of different stories. We just heard some stories from Toby and the other people, but we'll hear other stories about their experiences with the Holy Spirit. Some of them will be very big and dramatic, but others will be more subtle. They'll be quiet and gentle. And we'll also see the Holy Spirit working among us today. I know I did this last year as well, and we had some great testimonies that we didn't see at the time. But afterwards, we heard about the Holy Spirit was working in people's lives, and they haven't been the same since. So I encourage all of us to be open to the Holy Spirit, to allow Him to work in our lives however He desires to. We need to leave our expectations at the door. The Holy Spirit knows what we need in that moment, whatever it might be for each and every one of us. We need to be open to it. And we don't need to worry if it looks like the person in the video or the person next to us or my experience. We just need to accept the gift He has for us in this moment. His gifts are as unique as each and every one of us. So we just have to be open to it, and also not to be discouraged if maybe the person next to us is having some big manifestation, but just to be joyful that the Holy Spirit is working in all of us. It might even be that we leave the church today without a big experience, and the Holy Spirit then starts working later on in our lives. But the main thing is just to be open. I'm going to keep saying that over and over again, to be open and to allow Him to work how He wants to work, and to trust that He is working. It might be that you look back and like, oh, He was working here. I was just so focused on it being this way. And He's actually working in another way. But just to trust that He's here and that He wants to be part of your life. So now I think we're going to move into a time of praise and worship. Maybe we won't sing the Let It Rain song if you want to keep it simple.
Yeah, we need the rain though.